So the Congress of South African Trade Unions says it's disappointed over the slow pace of workplace transformation. Recent findings by the Commission of Employment Equity revealed a stark and persistent dominance of white males in top positions within the private sector, highlighting the ongoing challenges in achieving equitable representation. But let's now unpack this further with Cosatu's parliamentary coordinator, Matthew Parks. Matthew, a good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll go into the data in a moment, but let's talk about whether or not you're honestly surprised by the data that is shared, considering how long this has been a talking point for our country.
Yeah. Good morning. Thanks for having us. No, look, we can't be surprised. I think we're pained by it. We're 30 years into democracy, and yet we still see, glaring evidence that we've failed really to transform in the private sector at the workplace. And really, there should be a wake-up call for all of us. It can't just be an issue that trade unions are upset about or workers are frustrated by. It's an issue that employers should be shamed by, should be taking action around. And there should also be a moment for government too, to also look at what it can do to help nudge employers to do the right thing. But really, it can't be justifiable 30 years into democracy that basically white males, who are about 4% of society, occupy nearly half of senior management positions in the private sector. If we're serious about overcoming the legacy of apartheid, discrimination, of unlocking the full potential of the economy of each worker, then we should be taking this matter much more seriously. And I think also political parties themselves have not been helpful, especially those in the opposition benches, because when Parliament amended the Employment Equity Act last year and to try to strengthen it, to try to push the employers in the private sector to do much more, parties like the Democratic Alliance, Action SA, the Freedom Front Plus, and so on, actually went on to attack any efforts to address employment equity. So we really do hope that everybody will really take this as a wake-up call, because we must do something much more to address this legacy of discrimination.
I mean, there is the green shoot in that there is, some sort of growth in black leaders in middle management, right?
No, there is, and that's important. And so it's not all doom and gloom. If you look at the public sector, which is a significant employer, there's been significant progress. So you don't really find the same challenge in the public sector. Obviously, there are still some issues, especially with regards to persons with disabilities. I think what's really glaring is that senior management, especially in the financial and the banking sectors, the mining industry, insurance industry, hospitality, and so forth. But there is progress. You can see, for example, the kind of the creation, as you're saying, of middle management, of a black middle class. But we do need to see all workplaces reflecting the diversity of our society. And the Employment Act is not a rigid act. It does take into account the diversity of South Africa, of the diversity of each region's demographics, and that's useful. But what we do need to see is employers make a conscious effort to mentor workers, to open up doors for them, to deal with issues of discrimination, to invest in the career and the skills path of workers. But we do need to see much more commitment and action.
Yeah, of course, one of the big talking points right now is going to be this government of national unity, right? In the idea that political parties need to sit and consolidate their manifestos for the sake of this government. And I wonder, as a tripartite alliance partner, how much conversation the ANC is having with yourselves, Cosatu, around issues of transformation as they go into these talks of consolidating manifestos and policy direction.
Yeah. So look, the Constitution remains the guiding principles for all of South Africa and all political parties, whether they realize it or not. Our laws remain our laws. So Employment Equity Act remains a law of the Republic. It is binding upon all workplaces, all employers. Whether political parties appreciate that or not is academic for them, really. And then, of course, the ANC is the majority party in the government of national unity. So its manifesto, we insist, must remain the anchor of it. Obviously, you might need to tweak here and there because you are having to accommodate a bit of a poikikos of 10 other parties. But the principles must be the Constitution, the laws, the transformation agenda we've embarked upon since 1994, and of course the ANC manifesto specifically. Ironically, often the other political parties don't really have many ideas to contribute. They often actually just say they'll implement the ANC or government's policies more efficiently. So we do hope that when it comes to issues of labor rights, of workplace transformation, of broader transformation, they will actually contribute constructive ideas of how to make sure we improve compliance. And we hope they won't take us on some ideological distraction by seeking to undermine or take us backwards. But I think we're confident the ANC won't allow that. think for us really is about how to improve compliance, and not just with Employment Equity Act too, where there's issues, but also other labor laws too, because you often find when an employer fails to abide by one labor law, he actually chooses, in most cases to ignore all the other labor laws, whether it's occupational health and safety, the minimum wage, the basic conditions of employment, and so forth.
Yeah, the reason why I raise that is, and again I ask just how much consultation has taken place with Cosatu in trying to help guide the position of the ANC as it works with other political parties. I mean, right now with this new cabinet, for instance, you've got this Minister for Employment and Labour, Nomakosazana Meth, who, you know, you'd of course note that she's the first minister in that position who has no ties to unions. Is that not a concern for you as you try and fight this agenda of transformation?
Yeah, look, to be fair to the ANC, this is a uncharted water, so it's not as ideal as we would normally want it to do. It does make it more complicated because they have to not only consult with alliance partners like Cosatu, but also with the 10 other political parties who make up the GNU. We have had some engagements, not enough. There is a commitment in the Government National Unity Statement of Intent for a specific dialogue with social partners, which includes organized labor. NEDLEC has reached out to the presidency to help facilitate that. But yes, it's going to be a bit of a week-by-week management process. But look, I think for us, it's just about we have to not rely upon friendship. We have to rely upon our organizational strength, make sure our unions are well-oiled machines, make sure workers are unionized, are aware of the rights, and to engage with government. We are reaching out to all ministers, including the Minister of Labour, to all members of Parliament, to say, here's Cosatu's proposals, here's the ANC's election manifesto, which we helped to draft as Cosatu over the end of last year, beginning of this year. But look, it'll be a week-by-week process, but we don't have the luxury of just simply saying, well, look, it looks a little bit tough, let's sit back and fold arms. We've got to go and engage and make sure we raise workers' issues. It does mean we also have to engage with other political parties too, who now occupy seats in government, because you have a Minister of Home Affairs, for example, from the DA. That's an important ministry. We'll have to engage with them. Likewise with basic education. It's going to be a learning process for us, but also we do hope the opposition parties who now occupy positions of responsibility in the state will also transform themselves from being oppositionists, just opposing for the sake of opposing, to being constructive partners in the GNU. But it's going to be a learning process. But if they misbehave, if they undermine transformation or workers' rights, then of course they won't get a positive response from us, and we'll be very blunt with them. But look, we're going to do it. And she's not the first minister, Nkosazana Meth is not the first minister of Labour who doesn't come from Cosatu. In fact, the very first minister, Tito Mboweni, had no ties with Labour. But yeah, I think we'll count people. We wish them well. We'll count them on what they contribute, and when they fail, we'll point that out. But if they do well, we'll support them as well.
Yeah, because these are the numbers, right? According to this report, 62.1% of top management positions are occupied by white people. 11.6% of them are occupied by Indian people. I mean, those numbers are quite stark, right? So have you, now that we have set up the 7th administration, the cabinet certainly has been set up, have you set up a briefing meeting or some kind of interaction with the new Labour minister to address these numbers that you are now addressing with us?
Yeah, so in fact, we actually sent a letter yesterday to request such a meeting, as well as other critical ministers like Minister of Trade and Industry and so forth. We have had some initial discussions with a couple of ministers and with members of Parliament, but not just on this issue. For example, we would also want to have discussions with the minister around modernizing and overhauling the Unemployment Insurance Fund, where workers often struggle to get their monies on time, the Compensation for Occupational Injuries and Diseases Fund similarly. Also to see how can we strengthen the CCMA, because that's the first line of defense often when workers' rights are violated in the workplace, including on issues of employment equity. So there's a whole host of issues we want to discuss, but we do hope we will meet with her within the next few days to kind of build that relationship, because yes, she's not from organized labor historically, but nonetheless, we do want to see her succeed. And of course, we are a critical partner for her over the next term to help her make sure she can hit the ground running as well.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for speaking to us. That there, Cosatu's Parliamentary Coordinator, Matthew Parks, speaking to us here on the AM Report.